Interesting. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with the lovely Christine Morgan. We are now in part 2, speaking about Christine the medium. Christine, take it away.
Okay. I think for myself, one of my most moving experiences on a personal level, and was at the very, very beginning. I was very reluctant. I didn't want to do this. My dad talked to the dead. I was hairdressing. I mean, I come from a fashion world, so I was not interested at all. And things happened very naturally. And I remember a lot of things were happening, and my mum always said I was very receptive as a child and would say odd things. Oh, there's a funeral tomorrow, and the next few days there'll be somebody died up the road in the street and things like that. Funny little things. And so the psychic side was very, very stimulated from my teenage years. I had a lot of very strong experiences. But one of the most spiritual experiences I had was I'd started to sit, and I went to meditation at a Buddhist center. I did all the dabbling around like everybody does, trying to find the right avenue. And I decided to start sitting at home under the guidance of my dad and a few other people. And I didn't have a circle to sit in. And I remember I'd started to sit, and after about 4 or 5 weeks, I went to bed one night, and my grandfather, the medium I was telling you about, who I wouldn't call him a working medium, but I know he was a mediumistic. He was, he could do this work. And he actually, I went to bed this night, and I had a dream he was sitting at my kitchen table. And I'd been asking, well, how do I know it's real? How do I know what's what? What do I know is my mind, and what have I got to do? How do I know I'm going to work with you? And saying to the spirit, just help me be the best I can be, as you're so eager in those early years, wanting to find out what's going on. And I went to bed, and I actually dreamt of my grandfather sitting at my kitchen table. I'd never met my granddad. And in my dream, I got up, and I actually felt my body move through my bedroom and looked at him at the kitchen table. And then I was led outside by a hand of another man, and he had a bucket of bright blue paint, and he was painting the word evidence over my patio pergola. And I'd been asking the spirit world and questioning, how will I know? How will I know it's right? Lead me to understand what is correct when it's really you, when it's just me, or I'm working psychically. And he had this bright blue paint, and he had these big words being written, evidence, in blue paint. And he showed me the word, and I walked back into my home, and I'm in a dream state, and my grandfather was still at the chair. My grandfather died the year before I was born. So there's only a few pictures in the family of him. I didn't know much about him at all. And he just said, remember.
Wow.
It was a strong, moving experience. And of course, I woke up the next day and, oh my gosh, talked to my mum, and I was able to give her absolute intimate detail of his features and how he looked and how he sounded.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'd only seen a very vague, old, pale, black and white photograph of him. And he has been given to me many, many times from the spirit world, and I believe he does work with me. I definitely believe he comes in to help me work. And it was a very moving experience, because it was like I was being taught something, and at the other time I was also being showed from the spirit that they were there.
Yeah.
So that actually took the curtain off a lot of things for me, for the reality and existence of the spirit world. So that actually really moved me. There's been thousands of lovely stories where, like every other medium, where you do lovely communication and connections with people. One of the biggest things that I do is I work a lot with families in Australia with suicide. So I work a lot with youth suicide and families who've lost children. So I've not been blessed with children myself in my life. So I seem to tend to attract people who've lost children. And I find that very fulfilling and very meaningful. And so it's an area where I can use my ability to help reunite those people and bring some sort of comfort and peace. But it actually brings something to me, Diana. I'm not actually quite sure what that is, but I feel there's some sort of aspect of healing in that for myself, because one of my greatest loves would have been to have a child. And that choice was taken from me. It wasn't my choice. So, it's a personal moment, but I actually believe that the spirit helped me heal that by being able to be a medium in between lost loved ones of children and their families.
Yeah.
So I always find those things very moving.
Yes, and of course your maternal love can be, that is inherent in you, can be given to those children in spirit.
That's right.
And that is something which, it gives me goosebumps, how safe they must feel with you, and how much you can do that.
Something that's close to my heart, and we've lost young children in our family, so it's something that I've experienced the grief with. And I just seem to attract a lot of youth, and I help as much as I can, you know, and to the fact that where I live, which is the northern beaches of Sydney, is a beautiful beach coastal area. There's 24 beaches along the coast here, but we have a very high number of suicide.
Oh.
And so I've been quite involved with a lot of families, and it makes the work more meaningful. And you can't heal anybody, you can only help heal themselves.
Yeah.
Give them guidelines to help and to support and to move forward. So I find that side of the work really fulfilling, because it is your mediumship being effective in an everyday level, which I think if your mediumship's not effective, and I've said this for many, many years, if it's not effective in your everyday life, what's the point of it?
Yeah, and do you feel that through developing your mediumship, because how old were you when you started developing?
I really didn't go seriously into my development till I was around about 30. I had a lot of experiences, which was a long time ago, and I've had a lot of experiences over the years leading up to that, and I sort of ignored it. I started to read the teacups like my mum and my grandmother. That was a tradition that was passed down, and we were a very strong psychic family. So it was very natural to interpret dreams on a symbolic level, very natural to read jewelry, pictures. It was easy because it was something I think that was inherent with us, and it wasn't shooed away. It was, oh, that's okay, that's fine. And my grandmother used to say, because granddad passed before her, and she used to say, oh, granddad was here last night. You know, so they talked about the spirit very naturally.
Yeah.
So when I decided to take it seriously, it's not that I lived in Australia, Dad lived in England, but my mum was very open to it, my grandmother was open to it, and people understood. So I was lucky that way. But I think you have to do a lot of searching within yourself to find out. And eventually I think they showed me the way, and I was led. I just had feelings that I knew I had to follow. And I eventually left the hair and beauty industry and went into this, but very reluctantly. And it was a very slow, gradual process. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this for a job. It was, I did all the church services, I demonstrated, I did fundraisers, and eventually over a period of time had such a big request for private sessions that I decided to do it part-time. So I did part-time mediumship, and I did part-time beauty work. And then eventually it just got so much, and I was doing 4 or 5 services a week in churches in Australia, that I decided to, okay, I'll take this a little step further, and I'll make a living and try to balance this out. So it just grew. It grew and it grew. And I was asked to teach, and it just got from there. And I just followed my intuition. I made lots of mistakes, but I just kept going because I believed the spirit were guiding me.
So what is one thing that you feel, one of the big things you've learned from the mistakes you've made? Good question.
How long a list do you want? I believe that you make mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
I don't believe any medium on this earth is 100% accurate all the time. I believe that we are simply that vessel to be as best we can in that acting, living moment. To me, in that living moment, which I call it the living moment, of being active with that soul in the spirit world, we are all fragile. And I feel it's managing the fragility of the human mind and the nature of the soul we're communicating with. But I believe that if you can put your hand up and say, I fluffed that up, I did not interpret that right, I did not sense you properly, I wasn't working with the power correctly, forgive me, let me try again.
Yeah.
I feel that they push you and guide you and you're consistent. But I feel that as you mature into your mediumship, you can look back and you can say, yeah, I make mistakes all the time with it. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
Because I think you have to make mistakes to learn and grow and reevaluate, but you learn to manage your mediumship, right? You learn to manage it in a mature way that it becomes healthy for you, and you work with your ability in a healthy way. So, and that, of course, involves looking at your mistakes. And one of the biggest things that I learned is that, yes, I make mistakes.
Yeah.
I make mistakes.
Yep. I totally agree. And I'm just a newbie in this, basically, new kid on the block. But it is, I think, one of the greatest things we can do early on in our training is realizing what you missed, where your mind and your emotional and awareness is, and then see how we can go from that. So on that note, we'll stop this part of the interview, and then I would like to continue with the next part in speaking about Christine as the recipient, if that's all right with you. Yeah?
From the spirit.
Yes, so recipient as in also that you have received messages. So that's what we'll do. We'll be right back. Hold on.